Leading across lines of difference. To lead across lines of difference is a skill that will not only enhance the productivity of your organization, but will equip you with a unique skill to truly operate in a global context. One of the key areas of leadership is communication. So here are some barriers to effective communication. The first one is cultural bias. We've spoken a little bit about bias in this course, and a bias is essentially a blind spot or a way of emphasizing one thing and de-emphasizing another. This can be both conscious and subconscious. In many ways, bias reflects ourselves and sort of assumes that our cultural norms and the ways in which we see the world are uniform. Okay, that's number one. Number two, a lack of awareness of cultural differences. People who see everyone as the same and de-emphasize the differences amongst people are guilty of a lack of awareness. As a leader, understanding the differences and, more importantly, the strengths of each and every person is a very, very important piece in tackling complex challenges. So awareness rather than a lack of awareness will increase your ability to communicate. Third, language differences. Even though in many parts of the world people speak the same language, the way in which language is used can often be interpreted differently. Remember, there's the language that we speak and then there's the language that we receive. And often there can be a disconnect between those two things. It's very important to ask probing questions, therefore, about what someone interprets your instructions to be. For example, if you tell someone, complete this task by this date, all right, they may not understand what you mean by complete. In their mind, complete might be checking a few boxes, whereas you might interpret it as not only checking the boxes, but going back and assessing the quality of those particular tasks, right? So you have quality and completeness in your mind. The person may be interpreting it as just going through and checking boxes. So it's important for you to really dive in and probe in terms of the language that the person may be using. The fourth one is ethnocentrism. We spoke about this term earlier, where we believe that our ethnicity or the ways in which we are is superior to the ways in which other people are. That can be a large barrier to communication because people can pick up when they feel that one may feel that they are superior to another person, right? Remember, 90% of communication is nonverbal. And so be aware of how you're communicating both verbally and non-verbally. And finally, inactive listening. Inactive listening describes a process where someone is just putting out or responding in general ways that don't provide the space for active listening. So let me give you an example of this. If I'm talking to someone and they're just saying, yes, 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 but I can see that they're clearly distracted, that is an example of inactive listening. However, if they were acting in a way that was fully present with me and engaged with me in a culturally sensitive way, then I could feel that I am being listened to. In other words, that person is demonstrating active listening. So as a leader, if you can recognize some of these things in your practice and address them, you can improve your cultural communication. The next important point to bring up is microaggressions. A microaggression is a brief, often unintentional bias that people communicate by virtue of what they say, do, or the environment they create. And this is by someone called Daryl Wing Su. I provided 3 examples. And the key thing for us here is to think about the hidden message. So the first one is when a white man or woman clutches their purse or checks their wallet as a black or Latino man approaches or passes them. So this gives a message that you and your group are criminals, right? That's what a microaggression looks like. It's very subtle in some ways and sometimes not so subtle. Whistles or catcalls are heard from men as women walks down the street. The hidden message is that your appearance or body is for the enjoyment of men. You are a sex object, right? So that's what a microaggression does. It sends hidden messages to someone and positions them in a certain way. A blind man reports that people often raise their voice when speaking to him. He responds by saying, "Please don't raise your voice. I can hear you perfectly well." The hidden message here is that a person with a disability is defined as lesser in all aspects of physical and mental functioning. So that's how microaggressions operate. And it's important to manage and be very, very critical and careful about how these microaggressions might operate in your organization. The next piece that's helpful for you as a leader to work through are difficult dialogues. And these are spaces where perhaps you are thinking about how to communicate around diversity. And so there's some 8 ground rules that are important. The first one is to be open and honest, okay? As you feel you can be. The second important rule is to respect each other's right to be heard, right? So you're being honest as much as you can be, but you're also respecting people's right to fully engage and fully be heard in the conversation. Remember that you might be a manager, but you also have the space to learn from others. So learn, both as a teacher and a learner, all right? Become an active listener, and remember that we can all participate in our own ways. Do not judge other people's feelings. Focus on behavior rather than the person. So don't use terms like you and your kind are like this. Rather focus on the behavior of the person. That's easier to address. Never ask someone to be a spokesperson for their whole group, right? So never ask women to talk on behalf of all other women, for example. And listen even when you do not want to listen. Very, very important. I myself am someone who is quick to interrupt someone, right? So that's not a very good practice in a difficult dialogue situation. So you as a leader would be great of you and professional of you to really hone in on these skills when engaging in difficult dialogues.